we get bold and add another color this time.
Hey, Kenneth?
Yeah.
I wanted to let you know, I'm enjoying this class. I bug you all the time. But on the handout, like where I say, would you send that? Jerry showed me that when he had that template on, it was just one page by itself.
Yeah.
He could print that page out. It was when the things I was supposed to trace had something else on it, we couldn't make it get bigger on our printer. So he was able to do it too. So who knows, maybe I won't have to ask you again.
Well, I can send all of those templates separately too. It's not a big deal at all to do that.
Well, or just put the templates on their own separate page each.
Yeah, I can do that. It's very easy. I just combined everything into one. So in a PDF file, but I can make separate files easily.
Oh, I thought we were just drawing small pictures.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to keep everything, if you printed it the size I have, it's about, I don't know, maybe 5 by 7, something like that. Yeah, that's something I would suggest, actually, is everybody start with smaller pictures. To start with a big picture, you waste a lot of paper for one thing, and you can learn just as much with a smaller one. The only real difference between a small picture and a large one is you need larger brushes. And you'll kind of get a feel for that as you move up in paper size. I really, most of my sketching is no bigger than, well, a lot are about 8.5 by 11s. I like those, 9 by 12. I don't want a lot of watercolor paper laying around the house, piling up, going up the closets with watercolors. So I do most of mine in a sketchbook, and that's how I like to paint the most. Which leads me in, I might as well start. To begin with, anyone have any questions they wanted to ask me? Things that I glossed over that I shouldn't have last week or anything like that. I tried to be excruciatingly precise while I was telling you. Because these things are so important to begin with, and you don't often get it if you get a watercolor book. They're limited in page number, and they can't really always explain everything to the extent that it might be helpful. And then, of course, a lot of people, if they've been watercoloring 40 jillion years, it just seems natural, and it doesn't even occur to them to tell you that. I'm self-taught. I'm a science illustrator. I guess I was last week too. But so I had to learn a lot of this on my own, and I know where the problems are because I really had them teaching myself, and I had a limited time to learn a lot of stuff because I really needed to do it at that time. And so it's fresh in my mind and the problems, and I run into them all the time myself. So what I did miss last time, and I want to show you, is my old board here. The old masonite board. It's, I think, about 12 by 18, something like that. But if you're watercoloring, you need some sort of a board to put individual sheets down if you're not using a sketchbook or a block. And to do that, all you got to do is you get your tape out and just make a roll of it. And just stick it on the back of your paper or on your board one. And there you go. Smash it down on your paper. Then you can work with it, move it around, whatever like that. And a lot of times you do. If you just keep your paper like this, it can really buckle if you're getting it super wet. If I were really getting it super wet, I'd probably put the tape all the way around the edges. But I generally don't get things that wet where you need to do that. But you can. What else would I say about that? You really need to control the flow of your water, and I'll be doing that today. A lot of books will say, put your paper at a 30-degree angle. Well, that's all right to start with like that. That's about works for the tape underneath it, but a lot of times, hey, I need more than that. I want to see that water run more, so I'll hold it up like this. And if I want something really smooth, then I'm going to take it and I'm going to just twist it around and let it flow in every direction till it just sort of smooths itself out, and get a lot more control than just sitting it down and hoping for the best, because sometimes the best doesn't happen. I can tell you that watercolor is really unpredictable. Even with people who have painted for years and years, sometimes you get things that you weren't expecting, and sometimes they're really good and a lot better than you can paint if you had tried to do it. And other times it's sort of a mistake. But about any mistake you make, you can correct or turn it into something else. So don't worry too much about mistakes. Also, in these small 7x10 practice pages, like if you did 6 or 8 of these of just blue sky kind of colored washes, you can always come back later and make little landscapes out of all of them by putting in a foreground and a middle ground, and making things up. So you can practice on top of these and get a lot of use out of them each time. So we've talked about my board. That's one thing I really wanted to bring up, is you often need something like that. I'm working on a block today that still got a few pages left in that. One thing about these blocks I've noticed is the closer you get to the end of them, the floppier they get, even though they've got a hard back. So something to consider. Now then, Lynn wanted to know about how I made a wash, didn't you, Lynn? Indeed. Okay, I'm taking a brush, this brush. Oh, yeah, you can see that well enough there. Okay, and I'm going to get my water out. Where's my water going? Sorry, water's on the other table right here. There it is. I knew I had too much room here. There we go. Okay, that's my water pot. Getting my brush all in it. First time you use your brush, you got to kind of soak it up a little like that. I got the old 14 Zen here. Although, let me show you my brand new brush. I just got it in the mail. Love this thing. Oh, can you see that? There it is. A Princeton number 6 synthetic squirrel wash brush. Boy, this really holds a lot of water. It's almost too big for these 7x10, but I like it. For one thing, it looks traditional. As far as working better than this Zen brush, no difference really. But that one is a bit larger. Okay, I've got my water here. We're gonna make up a graded wash today. And I think I'm just gonna use some more ultramarine. That's been the color I've worked with for a while. As you can see over here, see, I'm just kind of putting some water in here. I'm gonna put a lot of water right there in my palette hole. Swirl it around a little. Get a real nice dark color worked up. Now, ideally, I ought to have squirted my colors a bit with the mister before I started. Do that. Just about that much. Just dampen them. It wets the surface and really makes it easier to lift paint off of pans if you're using pan paint. Okay, now this is really getting good and soupy. I'm going to bring it over here. I'm using this little porcelain palette today. Sometimes I just use the plate for most things, and use the sponge you see sitting right here. I've got a damp sponge. That's to wipe off my brush, excess water. And also, if I want to clean my plate, I'm doing that. See, I'm filling up this thing. I'm going to have a lot of wash. I'm going to grab some more water out of my water pot, put in here. So I got, it's almost full. That's probably more than I'll need because I'll be adding water as I make this graded wash. Okay. Another thing you'll notice is right here underneath my porcelain palette, I've got a rag. I use that to wipe my brush on too, because if I don't have something like this, I end up wiping it on my hand sometimes because you really need to be quick with some of what you do. So I do that. I also use that for a water reservoir, just kind of putting a little bit right here on the top of my hand. I can have that ready in case I need it sometime. get a lot of paint on you that way. Okay, now I'm going to make a graded wash, and that means we're going to start at the top with our darkest. And see, I'm already holding this because I like to do this at about an angle like that. I want to make sure I get that bead. Now, I'm going to take the first one, and this first line, see, I'm getting paint out of my palette onto my brush. It's really soaked up. It's almost dripping, and I'm just going to wipe the tip off just a tad because I really want this brush soaked. Okay, now I'm going across here about this fast, right across here, because it's making a bead, and I want it to keep making that bead. There it goes. I have done that. Now then, I can make another band of that just to get it going. I'm going to make it quite as wide, so I'm not going to put my brush down quite as far, because we're going to have to gradate this thing, and we've got a lot of blue paint right there. So now I've got a dilute paint. I'm going to go into my water pot, shake out my brush, and put it into here. And I'm going to do it twice because I really need to start diluting this down, and that's already kind of dark up there. I don't want to mess around too much. Notice I'm going back the other way. You can go both directions. Some people suggest only painting in one direction. Now see, that didn't change it much. So I'm going back in here now and I'm diluting some more, just putting water in here. Because we're going to run out of space. I'm going down here. Now it's starting to change color. Okay, I'm going to dilute again. Each time you want to dilute, for what I've got here, it's taking about 2 brushfuls. It'll vary, and you're just going to have to play with it to see what it'll do. Here, I've gone back again. Now I'm going to do it again. More. It's overflowing my little palette here. I don't care. That's fine. I'm ready to go across here. And now I'm just going to go clear water on this last one, because there's enough blue C in that bead to take it on down. There we have it. Wipe a little of that off, and there's our graded wash. I'm not sure what it'll look like. If I can get it up here closer to you, maybe. Well, with the contrast on that, it looks kind of like it all of a sudden changed. But that's a pretty good graded wash. Sometimes it'll work out better for you than others. If you don't like it, notice it's still wet. Well, I could just really jump in here and I could start doing things. Let's just do things. Oh man, I'm gonna put some paint here. Notice I put a bunch of paint right there. We gotta keep going. So I gotta get more wash, more paint. Okay, now some water, some wash, going down here. Now I'm just going pure water because there's a lot of stuff there. Okay, now get that plenty wet down there. Okay, so it'll flow. Now then, here we are, flowing it down. I'm sucking up extra water as it goes down there. Yeah, you can still see that. And there, I've corrected that whole thing, and it looks a lot better, I think. So you can jump in there as long as that paper's wet. Once that starts just turning damp, you will make such a mess, you won't believe it if you try and go back in and like redo a sky or anything like that. But if it's wet, you're good. If it's starting to get damp, mist it. Usually 2 or 3 squirts is all it'll take because there's already a lot of water in that paper. So that's how I would approach that. Notice my water's really getting mucky there, but that's okay there. I need to grab a paper towel right here. Do a little dabbing around. Don't really want it getting on other spots. Now you have to be very careful if you're wiping water off of your tape, because if you get right into that painting, it's going to smear it. I'll guarantee you. I have done that so many times. Okay, that's pretty well good now. I'm really happy with that as a graded wash. That will look good. Where this, particularly with the blue, is important is skies. If you look at the sky outside and pay attention on a clear day, you'll see that it's bluest overhead and it fades to a much lighter blue as you get to the horizon. And so if you're trying to be a realist painter, then you'd probably want to emulate that. Now, just because that's how the sky really is doesn't mean you have to paint that way, though, by the way. There's lots of variation in there. Now, for those of you watching Gloria, she's doing things very differently today because she's using a water brush. Since we're beginners, we're not going to do water brush, but it's a really good way to do a graduated sky because the brush is filled with water in its body. And so you just make your dark line of paint and just keep squeezing the brush a little, and you can just work the water and dilute it all the way down very quickly. I use a lot of water brushes when I'm out painting on site. They're just very convenient. But we need to learn to use our regular brushes too, don't we, Gloria? We do. So what else do we want to try here? Okay, the next thing is the variegated wash. And it's pretty much along similar veins. Let me soak up some paint here. Get my little palette cleaned up a little. It's another good thing for this sponge. You can clean things out pretty quickly, easily. I keep things really nice and neat here for these classes, but when I'm painting, I've got stuff paint all over all my palettes and all my paints. They start looking pretty bad, but it still works fine. Okay, for this one, we're going to make up, we'll make up 3 washes. There's my brush. And we'll have a blue. We'll kind of make like a sunset sky colors. So I'm going to take some blue. I got that blue wash made up. Make that pretty dark. I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to get some alizarin crimson. Any kind of a bluish red right now. We'll talk about these colors quite a bit next week.
Which crimson did you say?
It's called alizarin crimson hue. It's a permanent alizarin crimson. If you get the actual alizarin crimson, it's not very light fast and will cause problems. And I'm going to use a Hansa yellow medium. Oh, that's a dirty Hansa yellow. I ought to wipe that out a bit. Yellows get so dirty. Often in the sky, I will use Naples yellow. That's my favorite go-to sky color. And I also use that mixing flesh tones. I find it a very useful color. Hansa yellow to me it's yellow. It's just kind of a good mid-yellow because I don't have a lot of yellows. I use, well, I guess I have more than you'd think. But I don't use like a lemon yellow. A lot of people use a greenish yellow, orangish yellow. Like New Gamboge is orangish and lemon yellow is greenish. I use a Hansa, which is medium. And for another yellow that's more orangish, I use quinacridone gold. And then I use Naples yellow, a nice warm yellow. And then yellow ochre too, which is an earth yellow. Okay, as you can see, I have my 3 primary colors all mixed up here on my palette right there. And we're going to work them all together all the way down the page. Fill up my brush with blue. Put a line across here, right quick. I'll put 2. I always like to start with 2 lines. Okay, maybe we'll just put in 1 more. Notice I didn't refill much that time. I could have, I probably should have. Now I'm going to rinse it. I'm going to pick up the red. And I'm holding my board because I just like it tilted a lot. We're going to put this red right in here on top of that bead. Let it mix in. We can even go above it a little. We want a little more purplish look because it'll make purple. Now I'm going back down here. Well, I'm spreading this stuff around. This Strathmore paper is really much more forgiving than a lot of other kinds. Now I'm getting my yellow and we're going to put it into that and make a little orange and go right on down. So there we have a generic sunset sky kind of. I tilt this to make the colors look any more clear to you. A quick way to do it, now it's still wet and I think I want more blue up there. What am I going to do? I'm going to go in with my blue right now before it dries. Put a streak up here in the top, maybe both corners maybe. There, I've done that and it's starting to flow down now. Look at that. Boy, it'll do that sometimes. I can twist it around though and let it flow, make it look like a cloud or something. Let's put in some cobalt teal. That's another color I really like. I'm not trying to tell you to get all these colors. I'm just picking stuff up. Cobalt teal is going to go right through there like that. Oh, did you see that? I'll put it in again, just like that. Now then, if you'll notice, I'm not sure you can see it well, we're starting to get the dreaded cauliflowers here. That's because I put that wash of cobalt teal there was thinner than the wash on the paper now. So what am I going to do about that? I could leave it and make it look like clouds. We can let it drip like this and look like rain. While we're at it, I'm just going to grab some Payne's Gray. I love Payne's Gray, Winsor Newton Payne's Gray. Good cloudy sky color. Well, I'll put that right up here too. Whee! You see that? You didn't see that, did you? There it is. I'm putting some in again. It's going to be a cloud. Let's make it sort of cloudish on top. You got to really make this dark at the bottom. So I'm really putting it in heavy there. And while that's still wet like that, we'll just let it flow and it'll look like rain. Can we see that? We can't see that. I've got to hold it sideways. I'm sorry, like this, so it'll, see, I've got it tilted at an angle. I'm holding it up and just letting it flow. And it'll flow down through here like a very interesting cloud. Move that over like that. So here's what we ended up with doing all of that. Get it under the camera and up, over like that. And you can kind of see all these blends we've made. And you can keep doing that as long as it's wet. Like I say, just don't try it when it's dry or when it's damp. Once it's totally dry, then you can go back in over it and we can do glazes and things like that, which I'll talk about. Okay, we've done that. The next one we're going to do is the wet and wet wash. And this is how a lot of people do skies to begin with, is here I am dipping my brush in this nasty water. I probably ought to clean out water. It's always good to start with some clear water, but it'll work. It's not that dirty. We're going to do the whole thing just in water, and I'm just smearing my water over here. You want to even, just like you're painting a wall in a house. I just get it all the way down there, spread it around evenly. Now you want to look at it, and you'll see it glistening, really shining in the light. Okay, yeah, thank you. Gloria's giving me some clean water here. That's nice. And I'm sure you can't see mine glisten particularly. I don't know how to get that. But it's still glistening, and that's good as long as it's glistening. We're going to put some paint in it now. We don't want puddles on it, but we don't want it starting to lose its sheen either. So cross here, notice that, it's dribbling down. We put that in there. Could probably make it look a little more sky-like if we kind of twiddled our brush around like that. See, do that. Okay, we want to add some more to it. I'm going to go with this cobalt teal again. I'll put it up in here. Let it mix in with that blue, wet and wet. Very similar to what I was doing earlier in a lot of ways. That, whoa. Just got green all over my yellow, that teal. There, I washed that out. There. I'm going to get some Naples yellow to put down in here. Oh. One thing I really like about Naples yellow is it doesn't make green quite so readily with when it gets mixed with blues. So you can keep that yellow when you've got things flowing in there. So you can see that. We get a nice warm lower part of our sky. Where I added that extra blue up here, we're getting a little bit of cauliflower. That happens. I'm going to mix a little bit of paint, kind of dry, and go in up over here and just kind of redo that bit, see what happens. I could give that a bit of a mist, straighten that up. That lid off. There we go. Whoa, just a quick mist, and one little shot sometimes is all you need with that stuff. Now I'm holding it. Notice what I'm doing. I'm moving this around. That way that cauliflower won't tend to pile up the pigment all at the bottom like it was doing. Now it's also, the yellow is flowing up a bit. I'm just flowing things around now. And so there is what we get. And that's a wet in wet wash. So you start with water on the paper and then just spread your pigment in. You know, you can make sky and clouds like that. I could have left some space here for white, for clouds, but it's just as easy to use your towel and just take a little off. And a lot of times you can get a more interesting kind of cloud effect going on. And smear it around and lift and what have you. There we go. We got a bit of cloud up there. And you can work with that and add color to it. So there we have 3 nice washes going. All work pretty well. Now I'm going to pull this tape off. Notice how I did that. We talked about that last week, how I'm pulling away from the painting at an angle like that, keeping that tape at an angle. Now when I'm here, they're both there, so I'm pulling right down the middle. And by doing that, you can see a little bit of edge here just peeled off. That's not too bad. And I'll peel off the other. And so there we have 3 nice washes. Okay, we've done wet in wet, graded washes, variegated washes. So now we're going to do a landscape. That's and you know, you looked at those templates I gave you and things, and you might think, oh, the cup is probably the easiest thing to do. Maybe I should start with that. But to be honest, that cup is much harder to paint than a landscape. And so I'm going to do it, because then I know I'll have success. Hopefully. Okay, let me get rid of this tape here. Set this down. Got my board here. I'm going to raise that up so you can see it quite a bit better. Now, I've got this all drawn out in pencil. I really made it dark, so hopefully you could see it better. I could have done that in ink even and made a really strong ink line with it. We're going to use 2 colors for this. We're going to use complements, or near complements. They're not exactly a complement, but we're going to use our ultramarine blue again. And this time we're going to use it with burnt sienna. And burnt sienna is an earth brown that's got a reddish cast to it, kind of orangey, and that's what makes it a complement. So when you mix 2 complements, you get gray, you get neutrals, and variations of that. And again, next week we'll delve into that a lot deeper. But you can do some very nice paintings with just 2 complementary colors. And these work well. Another pair is the ultramarine blue along with burnt umber, which can actually give you even a blacker black. And that's what we're wanting with any of these complement pairs, is good tonal range. Because if you use, say used yellow and purple, you can do that. Those are complements too. They're opposite each other on the color wheel. But what you end up as a neutral is more brown than anything, and not a very dark brown at that. But we'll be exploring colors you can mix black with too. You can make lots of blacks. Using regular black paint is not something most people do unless there's a very good reason. Okay, I'm going to do the sky. I'm probably going to gradate the sky just a bit. Let's see, make sure you can see things there. The reason I want to do that is contrast reason. I'm going to bring this sky all the way down to the horizon line, which is right here. That goes through the mountains. So I'm going to paint the mountains while I'm painting the sky. Okay, going across here, my regular graded wash. Got it going pretty well here. Maybe a little more now. And now I'm going for water now. Boy, I just really don't. Yeah, just going for water. Get it wetter. All right. I'm grading that on down. Going right through that mountain, but not through that house. That house has to stay white. It's okay to go through the tree behind the house, not the house. Okay, there we've got that. I think I want a little more blue in the sky up here. Probably regret it, but I'm gonna do it. There we go. I could have waited till this dried and come back and done it, but it's working out fine. So now I'm drying things. I'm kind of letting this flow around a bit. It's getting a little dark in the bottom of the mountain, and that's just exactly fine. So I'm not worried about that. I'm brushing away excess water as it kind of drizzles down, letting it dry a little bit, not much. I think that's pretty good, actually. I could get out a hair dryer, but I won't. Now, I'm turning it upside down. I'm getting my burnt sienna, making me a little puddle here in my palette, because I'm going to need a fair amount. Not a whole lot. Sometimes, as you'll notice, I'm leaving water in my paints here like that. And that sort of dissolves the paint so I get more when I stick my brush in. And also, sometimes I just paint with what's right there and don't even bother putting it here in the palette at all. In fact, here, this first stroke, I'm just going to pull the paint directly out of here. But I am going to mix it, because if you don't mix the paint around a little, sometimes you'll get globs. And you don't want a glob of paint there. I've got a pretty dark mix going, and that's what's going to be the very first line here. I'm doing the ground, and I put in this burnt sienna line here, and it's fairly dark. I'm getting a little more. I'll make that pretty dark there. Okay. Now then, just taking water out of my palette I mixed there. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Gloria. There we go. It's going down. Now I'm going for water. I'm just doing water the rest of the way. So I'll get some gradation. Don't get in the house. And it's okay if it goes into the mountain, but not into the sky. We'll save that for later. Okay. That's down. Now then, I think I want to pull a little bit out. I'm not quite happy with that, so I'm going to drag my brush across here and just pull out a little pigment all I can. Okay, now, see, I got a little bit of that in the sky too. I don't know, maybe I'll take that out too. There, I'll brush that out a bit. Okay, now I've got a line forming here. I'm gonna, I keep moving, I'm sorry. Trying to hold my finger. I'm just brushing over this. There. Okay. Now we're looking pretty good. I've got a fan blowing here and it's drying me out. I've got to find another piece of paper. Dab that off a bit, and we're good. Ah, yeah, I like that. Okay. Let me blow dry this right quick. It doesn't take very long to blow dry these things. It just has to stop the water from running, and I'm ready to paint again. Now then, what I want to do, I want to hold this up higher so that you can see it better. My water's under it. I have to keep moving there. There's some. Now I'm going to take my ultramarine blue, you can see over here, and I'm mixing it with this burnt sienna I've got here. And right now it's getting to be a real dark blue. So I'm going to add a little more burnt sienna to it. And I'm wanting a gray. As I mix this, I'm wanting a blue-gray, so I may need to add a little more blue to it until I get just the shade I want. Now that's a little dark. I think I want a little more blue, because these mountains are distant and we have aerial perspective. And aerial perspective turns everything blue and violet. But we don't have any violet because we're using two colors. So we're just going to use blue, and I'm really diluting it quite a bit here. And I'm going to test it on this paper up here. That looks pretty good to me. Another thing I'm going to do is switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to my number 10 Blick Synthetic. So I got this full of that paint, and I'm going right along the top line of this first mountain. And trying not to do very far down. Okay, we're running out of time. I heard my dinger. Okay, now I'm rinsing out that brush real quick. I'm leaving a little water in it. I just dabbed it on my paper towel. And that way I can bring this color down and let it fade a little toward the bottom. Okay, now I really like that a little more blue, to be honest. So I'm going to put a little more blue in my paint and just do the thing again. Oh, still wet. That's too much paint. I don't, you notice? See how it runs down? That's too much. It's okay. I get a little more up here. Go across like that. Rinse out my brush. I'm going to soak up the bottom part down there. There. Now that gives me the color I was looking for on that. And I like that. Now I'm going to take the same thing, and this one I'm going to make it a tad darker actually. So I'm going to add a little bit of that into it. And we're going to go over here and do essentially the same thing. We're going to make one band up here, following the ridge. And you have to be very quick. You can't mess around a lot with this. Rinse out your brush, damp it off completely there, and then drag this paint down to the bottom. Watch out for your house and try and keep it white. Okay. Now then, when that's dry, we could even put on another coat on one or the other of the mountains just to kind of separate it out and add some interest. Now in the house, I'm going to use pretty straight. You might even go to a smaller brush for the house, a number 6 for this. Whatever you got that's a little smaller, it doesn't matter. Okay, I've got a pretty dark, pure mix of that burnt sienna. That's going to be the roof on the house. Both of the roofs. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush, damp it off again on a paper towel or a rag, and soak up some of that excess there. A little heavy. There we go. Now you can add a little complexity to that by putting in just a dot of blue, especially along the white of the building. The reason for that is we're making contrast. Now then, I'm going to mix up a really strong batch quickly. We've got to quit here. Of dark gray by just using almost pure burnt sienna and pure ultramarine blue. Now this looks black. And what I'm going to do with this is paint the tree behind it. Now it's going to spill into the mountain because we don't have time to let it dry. But that's okay to demonstrate what I'm talking about. I'm going right around that house edge there and out into the land a little bit. Okay. But basically, I want it really dark around that house. The reason being, that's our center of interest. And we've got the greatest contrast, that black tree against the white house. And so it really draws your eye there. We're also, when you look at what I painted in your handout, you'll notice I've got these leading lines of stubble, grass going to the house. And we've got a row of vegetation kind of along the horizon, again, to add strong tonal contrast to what we've done. All of the detail is around the center of focus. Everything else is subdued to that. And so here we've got this. I'm just doing it all in this one color, but you can vary the tone. Another thing, don't draw a straight line along the bottom of your house there. Bring it into the ground with vegetation, things like that. It should be a kind of a soft line. I'm really getting in a hurry here, but you get the idea here. I'm going across there like that. You can see I'm bringing that house into the ground, not with a straight line or anything. Now I'm just going to soak some of that off. Maybe that's a shadow area out here. Put one out here. Anyway, That's as far as we can get on that today. Give these a try. Look at my picture that I did and try and do something similar. You can vary it any way you want. You could have a brown sky just as readily as you can have a blue sky. And now that that sky is cleared, we can even take brown paint, put in a cloud up here. Brown cloud. And when it'll look okay. The mind will adapt to it. I could paint the whole thing up here with brown. Anyway, that's all the time we have. And we'll try it again next week. There I am. I think. Okay.
Hey, Ken, thank you so much for today.
Bye.
I just noticed, I don't know if it was just me, but it felt a little awkward to watch the art being produced upside down.
Yeah.
So we may get together before next week and see if there's a way we can work together to make your art space a little easier to follow along with for newbies.
That's a problem. I forgot about that being reversed.
It's all right. I hope you all enjoyed this class. We'll have the recording up before 1 o'clock. I know there were some issues with some people who couldn't join us today because of the registration number again. In the future, we will not do registration through Zoom because that seems to cause issues. And so we'll just send private numbers out. But thank you, Ken, and thank you all for coming to class today. I hope you have a good day and get to join us with other things. Keep painting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you, Kenneth.
Give
Thank
all
you.
these a try. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.